My name is Sloane Mercer, and the day I walked into that federal courtroom, I watched my uncle's face go white as chalk. The prosecutor had just called my name not as a witness for the defense, not as a family member sitting in the gallery, as the arresting agent. Special Agent Sloane Mercer, FBI. My Aunt Diane grabbed the edge of the bench like the floor had dropped out from under her. My cousin Preston stared at me like I'd grown a second head. And Uncle Roy, the man who'd spent 5 years telling anyone who'd listen that I was the biggest disappointment the Hargrove family had ever produced. He just sat there at the defendant's table, in his expensive suit, slowly turning gray. I'd waited 3 years for that moment. Let me take you back to where this really started. It was Thanksgiving, 4 years ago. I was 26, living in a studio apartment in Columbus, Ohio, working at a sporting goods store. At least, that's what my family believed. The dinner was at Uncle Roy's house, a 6-bedroom colonial in Dublin with a 3-car garage and a wine cellar. Roy Hargrove was a real estate developer, the kind who shows up on local news segments cutting ribbons at shopping centers, who donates to the Children's Hospital and gets his name on a plaque. He was also the man running the largest mortgage fraud and money laundering operation in central Ohio. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That Thanksgiving, I sat at the far end of the table in a sweater I'd bought from a clearance rack. My cousin Madison had just been promoted to VP at her financial firm at 28. My cousin Drew had been accepted to Ohio State's medical school, and me, I'd left my MBA program 18 months earlier, 2 semesters from finishing. Still at the sporting goods store, Sloane? Roy asked. He didn't even look up from the turkey he was carving. Still paying my rent, I said. That got a polite laugh from no one. My Aunt Diane patted my hand with the particular brand of pity that only comes from women who've never had to worry about money. I'm sure something will work out for you, sweetheart. Eventually, my mother, sitting beside me, squeezed my knee under the table. She'd always defended me quietly, in ways that cost her. Roy was her brother. This house, these dinners, this was her family too. What nobody at that table knew was that I'd left my MBA program because of something I witnessed, not something I failed. 18 months earlier, I'd stumbled across irregularities in a real estate investment portfolio I was analyzing for a class project. The properties were real. The transactions looked legitimate at first glance, but the appraisal values were inflated by 30, 40, sometimes 60%. And the company behind several of the transactions had a familiar name on its LLC registration, Hargrove Development Group. I took what I found to a professor I trusted. He told me I was reading it wrong. I took it to the university's ethics office. They told me to be careful about making accusations without evidence. Then someone slashed my tires in the campus parking garage. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an FBI financial crimes investigator named Dana Okafor. Somehow, she'd heard about a grad student digging into real estate fraud in the Columbus area. She asked if we could meet. I left the MBA program 3 days later. Not because I gave up, because going to class while secretly working with federal investigators made keeping a low profile nearly impossible. My cover story was simple. I couldn't handle the pressure. I burned out. I went back to retail. Roy absolutely believed it. By the time I sat down at that Thanksgiving table, I'd been working with Dana's team for over a year. I was a confidential source who'd become something more. A trained asset with enough real estate knowledge to help them understand what they were looking at, and enough family access to go places federal agents couldn't. That dinner was the first time I saw the operation clearly from the inside. Roy stepped away from the table twice to take calls. Both times, I watched him through the sliding glass door. His body language changed tighter, faster, the practiced ease of the dinner table dropping away. I caught 3 words through the glass on his second call. Close the Linden account. Linden Street was a property I'd flagged 8 months earlier. A warehouse converted to mixed-use retail, appraised at $4 million, that had sold twice in 14 months. Once for $1.2 million, once for $3.8. I excused myself to help with dessert, and typed a 2-line message to Dana on my secure app. Linden account being closed. Tonight. Her response came in 40 seconds. We see it. Stay calm. After dinner, while everyone else moved to the living room, Roy cornered me in the hallway. You know, Sloane, I've been thinking about you, he said. He had a way of making generosity sound like a verdict. I could use someone with your analytical background. Nothing glamorous, reviewing documents, organizing files. But it's a foot in the door. He smiled. The smile of a man who believed he was offering charity to someone drowning. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't grow on trees. That night, I drove home and filed a 12-page contact report. I want to tell you about my cousin Nadia. She was Roy's daughter. Younger than me by 3 years. Quieter than anyone else in the family. With the kind of careful watchfulness that I recognized because I'd developed it myself. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, she texted me out of nowhere. Can we get coffee? Somewhere, not near the house. We met at a bakery on the east side, 7 in the morning, a Tuesday. She was already there when I arrived, both hands wrapped around a mug, not drinking it. "I need to know something first," she said. "And I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Are you investigating my father?" The bakery felt very small. I looked at her for a long moment. Nadia looked back at me with exhausted, frightened eyes. The eyes of someone who's been carrying a weight alone for too long. "What makes you ask that?" I said carefully. "Because I've been watching him for 2 years," she said. "And I have a folder on my laptop that I don't know what to do with." What Nadia showed me over the next hour changed everything. She'd been quietly documenting her father's operation since stumbling across a second set of financial records in his home office. Property valuations, wire transfers, the names of bank contacts who were approving loans on inflated appraisals. She didn't fully understand what she was looking at, but she'd photographed everything. She was 23 years old and had been sitting on evidence of federal crimes for 2 years because she was terrified of what exposing her father would cost her mother. "He's been pressuring my boyfriend to invest," she said. $150,000. "Jake doesn't know what the business actually is. I can't let him put his savings into this." "I can help," I said. "But Nadia, you need to understand what this means. If you give me what you have, it doesn't stay between us. It becomes part of something larger." She nodded slowly. "I know. I've known for a long time. I just needed someone safe to give it to." She looked at me across the table. "I always thought it was strange, honestly, that you left school. You were always the sharpest person in the family. My dad made fun of you constantly, but I noticed he never let you too close either, like he was keeping distance from you on purpose." "People underestimate what they dismiss," I said. "I'll skip over the parts that took the longest. Because patience isn't what makes a story. What I'll tell you is this. Roy Hargrove had been running inflated appraisal fraud for 11 years. He'd recruited corrupt bank loan officers, a compliant appraiser, and 2 title company insiders. He laundered the profits through 3 LLCs, and eventually, through a nonprofit youth sports foundation with his name on the letterhead. His wife Diane handled the nonprofit's accounts. Not knowingly, Dana's team confirmed that early. But Roy had used her signature on documents she'd never read. He'd also, in the final 18 months before the arrests, begun pulling my father into it. Not directly. Subtly. Dad owned a small landscaping company that had recently lost a major commercial contract. Roy offered him maintenance work on several properties. Legitimate-looking contracts. Reasonable pay. The properties were fraudulent assets. My father was unknowingly laundering money through lawn care invoices. When I found out, I sat in my car outside Dana's field office for 20 minutes before I could go inside. The arrest operation happened on a Wednesday in March. 19 people across 4 counties. Roy was picked up leaving a breakfast meeting at a hotel downtown. I wasn't there for the arrest. I was already in the courtroom building, getting mic'd up for what would be the first of 11 days of testimony. Roy's attorney tried the standard approaches. I was bitter. I was seeking revenge for years of family humiliation. I had manufactured evidence to settle a personal score. He used the word grudge 14 times in his opening cross-examination. I counted. What he couldn't explain away was 18 months of documented transactions. 2 cooperating witnesses inside the operation. Nadia's photographs of the internal records. And a financial trail Dana's team had reconstructed down to the wire transfer timestamps. Roy was convicted on 23 counts. Diane was given immunity in exchange for her cooperation and testimony. She didn't know what her signature had been on. She did, after the verdict, file for divorce. The Youth Sports Foundation was dissolved. Every dollar of misappropriated funds was ordered returned. My father's landscaping company was audited, cleared, and his name formally removed from any association with the fraud. He cried when Dana called him with the news. He didn't fully understand what I'd been doing for 3 years until that phone call. None of them did. The hardest moment wasn't the testimony. It wasn't even Roy's face when the verdict was read. It was Nadia. In the hallway outside the courtroom afterward, standing very still with her arms wrapped around herself. I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into me and cried for a long time without making any sound. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked eventually. I thought about what the right answer was supposed to be. Clean and decisive. Something that would hold up. "We did the necessary thing," I said. "And I think, most of the time, those end up being the same." She nodded against my shoulder. "He's still my dad." "I know. That doesn't go away." "No," I said. "It doesn't. I get asked sometimes, usually by people who followed the case, whether I regret the way it ended. Whether bringing down a family member is worth what it costs. Here's what I know. 11 families lost their savings to inflated mortgages they couldn't sustain. 4 of them lost their homes. A 24-year-old woman named Brianna Tovar, who'd bought her first house through one of Roy's associated loan officers. Spent 3 years in bankruptcy proceedings after the loan collapsed. She came to the courthouse the day Roy was sentenced. She didn't say anything to me. She just sat in the gallery and watched. When they read the sentence 14 years, she closed her eyes for a second and exhaled slowly. I thought about that exhale for weeks afterward. I'm a special agent now. Full-time, not confidential source. Dana Okafor is my supervisor and still the sharpest person I've ever worked alongside. I don't talk about the Hargrove case much. This is the first time I've told it in full. What I want you to take from it, if you take anything, isn't that I was brave or exceptional. I wasn't. I was a 24-year-old grad student who saw something wrong and couldn't unknow it. Everything after that was just the consequence of that one choice. The people who called me a failure weren't wrong about what they saw. From the outside, I looked exactly like someone who'd quit. That's the point. That's what made it work. But I've learned this. Doing this job, the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone has already decided doesn't matter. They never see you coming.